Evers Live, June 5th, coming to you from Kathmandu. I have some updates on the Hillary Dawa story. I spent the day today with his family at the hospital. I declined to visit him because I wasn't close with him. There was a lot going on. And he was in the ICU. Didn't feel like that was an appropriate time for an interview. The BBC Nepal service did go in and interview him, which is great. They got some information from him, but seeing his condition made me happy that we didn't make that step. However, it turns out I knew his wife from many years before, and his family. They're from a village that I used to do some work in and built some schools in. And so we were able to really understand who he was as a person. So there's lots of news to cover. Let's dive into it. First of all, how he got the name Hillary Dawa. People have been asking that. He got the name Hillary Dawa because in 2008, he was climbing Makalu, and at some point, his crampon fell off, and he descended all the way down Makalu in some incredibly difficult, including overhanging terrain, with only one crampon. It wasn't until the terrain became overhanging that he noticed he only had one crampon, apparently. So given his toughness, everybody started calling him Hillary, and that name stuck. Other information that I learned is that this is not the first time Hillary Dawa has been through this kind of experience. In 2019, he fell into a crevasse in the icefall, and he broke 2 of his ribs. Had to be evacuated off the mountain. Last year on Chulu West, there was heavy snowfall. The clients flew out in a helicopter. This was last fall. And he and a porter were forced to walk out of base camp in deep snow. And they went missing for another 4 to 6 days. I wasn't able to get the exact number, but to the point that the search parties had given up when the 2 of them very happily walked out of the woods and back into civilization. So he is an incredibly lucky and unlucky man, but he's doing very well in the ICU. He's going to be in the hospital for some time. He's got frostbite on his hands and his feet. But more importantly as well, he's suffering from dehydration. When you go through an ordeal like that, it takes the body a long time to get back and recover. But he's doing well. He's speaking to his wife. He's speaking to his family. We also learned a little bit more about what happened on the mountain. A number of different reports have come out of people speaking with him. And while I wasn't able to verify these myself, they are from trustworthy sources. I've seen videos of him saying this stuff. And basically what happened was that we can tell is at the Yellow Band between Camp 3 and Camp 4, when Chris and the Polish climber went down, apparently he was out of oxygen. And this was due in great part to the extremely long summit time, that 19-hour summit push from Camp 4 to the top and back down. Even though Hillary Dawa didn't summit, when Chris and his Sherpa met Hillary Dawa and the Polish climber, they were still on their way up. They turned around shortly thereafter. But being on the mountain at that altitude with limited oxygen for that long is probably the root cause of what happened here. And there does need to be some inquiry into why the turnaround times weren't enforced, why these decisions were made. Talking to Hillary Dawa's family, they were all kind of unanimous in talking about his character. He was a very honest man. He was he was happy to work for whatever people gave him. He wasn't super concerned about money. And what they did say is that he was the kind of person that when he was climbing, if someone was paying him to climb, if there was a client that he was working with, he would do anything possible to get that person to the top. He would not turn around. He would never tell a client to turn around. They would just try their hardest and see what came of it and rely on his strength. There was many stories of how this happened with him and many other situations. I think this probably was very much a part of his character, for better or for worse. So anyway, so as he came down to the yellow band and sat down to rest and said to the rest of the group, "You go on ahead, I'll catch up." He was out of oxygen. He fell asleep for some time, and when he came back to, everyone was gone off the mountain, and he was unable to catch up to the group. So basically, it took him a number of days to get down. I assume that, this is an assumption, the fact that he fell asleep at almost 8,000 meters is probably what led to him getting frostbite on his hands and his feet. So I assume that his travel from that point onward was very difficult. I know that most of his descent he did kind of scooching on his butt because his feet were not functional given the cold. When he got below Camp 1, on the way down to, he only had the food that he had in his pockets, like some different energy bars, some biscuits, and he melted ice in his mouth and in his hands to drink on the way down. When he got below Camp 1, he fell into a crevasse. By a stroke of luck, the long 5-ladder bridge had not been removed. There were 2 bridges, only one of them was removed. There was 1 bridge remaining. He used that to cross that crevasse, but then fell into another one. He was in that crevasse for, according to the Everest Chronicle, 2.5 days. And he basically was only able to get out because it was heavy snowfall and a number of avalanches dumped snow into the crevasse. He climbed up the ramp made by the snow that fell into the crevasse, and that's how he still then walked another day out, or crawled, and that's when he was discovered by the SPCC team. So an incredible story of survival. I learned from his wife that basically they had started the funeral. In Tibetan Buddhist culture, the 7th day after someone dies is a very important day, and there's rituals you need to do in those days. And so they had made all the preparations and were beginning the ceremonies when she got the call and learned that her husband was alive. I also met his young daughter, Mendo Sherpa, who just finished class 10 in Nepal. That's sort of like your high school equivalent. She's 18 years old, just turned 18. Super sweet young woman. She wants to study health, to be a health worker. In the next phase of her education. They were both so relieved to see him. His wife told me, it was a super sweet story. This wife told me that someone sent her the video of him, and she didn't know that she was looking at her husband until she saw that he was wearing this black knit cap that she had made him. She had knit for him for the expedition, and he had that on him the whole time. And that moment and the time that I spent with his wife and his daughter today, just hanging out, talking, just being present with them, reminded me of the real human consequences of this story. And I know it's not something that any of us forget. It's something that we're all very, very aware of. But seeing them and hearing them talk about what it was like to believe that their husband and father was dead, and then to have him actually materialize again, how dreamlike it was for them. It was just a very emotional thing for me. It was a very emotional moment. And it helps you understand the importance of every life on Everest. I know that this is something that we all share and believe, and it goes without saying. I did have a long conversation with the owner of Himalayan Traverse, a gentleman named Hillary Dawa. Also, same name. His nickname is Kali, not Hillary. And full transparency, the conversation was a little hard for me to follow. It was very late at night last night. But what I did learn from him, new information, was he did send me some screenshots that he did actually initiate the rescue at 11 o'clock in the morning on the 30th. They summited at 5 p.m. on the 28th. It's very possible that that is around the time that they were notified when the group was down to Camp 2, when Chris and the Polish climber were down there. I had reported from 8K, the expedition that held the insurance and the permits, that they had not received initiation for a rescue, but through this, they did. It just was also, 2 days after the incident. There's communication gaps there on the mountain, no walkie-talkies. There was a sat phone that was never used. However, that to set the record straight, I did see evidence of that. The rest of my conversation with him was more a discussion of different factors, kind of blaming a lot of different people. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the responsibility rests with the expedition company for managing and having safety protocols. It also rests with the people on the mountain for implementing those. And I guess that, and so then in other updates, the family many people have asked, like, what's the recourse for this? What are the next steps? Yesterday, there was an altercation at the hospital between some of Hillary Dawa's family members and the owner of the trekking company. The owner of the trekking company was put at the police post for the day, so he didn't run away, but then they filed a criminal complaint against him, so the police kept him there for investigation. On the other side of it, then, the trekking company owner filed a case against the family for protection and safety and a restraining order, basically. So on the other side of it, I do know the family today did file a notice, or what's called a nibedan in Nepal, but it was basically like an appeal or a notice to the Department of Tourism and the Nepal Mountaineering Association that Himalayan Traverse be put on the blacklist, given the decisions that they made. How this will shape out, we don't know, but the family has done everything they can to try to make sure that the company is censored because of what happened. In terms of his medical expenses and everything, those are being covered by insurance. And a gentleman named Steven, his last name is in my DMs. I don't have it written in front of me, but he has started a GoFundMe. And many of you asked me in the DMs, like, is this legit? And initially I didn't know, but then I actually spoke to him and I spoke to the family members, and they have all been in touch. So I'm in active communication with Steven, and we will work together to make sure that those funds get to the family transparently and all of that. In terms of next steps for this guy, he was the number 2 news story globally yesterday. He is probably the most famous person in Nepal at the moment, but dude is just chilling in the ICU where he should be, and he's going to be there for a long time. I think it's going to be quite a transition for the family, all of the attention and everything. From our side at Everest Live, I am going to wait a few days before we try to sit down and get an interview. I want to make sure that he is in a space to speak where it's not going to tax him or affect his recovery. But I also want to be able to sit down and get the full story and be able to ask him questions and for him to be able to speak comfortably about it. So stay tuned for that. I'm guessing it will be probably 4 or 5 days at least before we can get that. But I will be in constant touch with the family. I'm going to go see them again tomorrow for no reason other than, I've known them and they're going through a very hard thing, and I want to be present for them. But we'll let you know if there's any other news that comes up. So that's that. We're going to put the GoFundMe link in the comments. The Juniper Fund is also creating. They're in the process. They normally only support the families of fatalities on the mountain, but they are in the process of creating a mechanism to support cases like Dawa, who was rescued on Annapurna this year, if you remember the story with Ashok Lama, but then also for Hillary Dawa as well. So stay tuned. Both are great causes to support, and we'll let you know what's needed. I guess the last piece of advice that I will get before I jump off, this is like the longest post ever, is that remember now as well, it's important to donate. It's important to support him, but they will definitely need that support more in the coming weeks and months. Right now that this is a hot topic, there's a ton of energy and support flooding in, but I've seen in these cases 2-3 weeks after is when basically the news cycle moves on and everybody forgets. So donate early and often, but also just remember that that support is going to be needed for some time to come, and we're always a resource to help you with that if you so desire. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you guys soon.